7 days before the wedding, everything Mark believed in shattered. It happened on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where life feels steady, predictable, safe. Mark had been reviewing the final guest list, smiling to himself as he pictured the ceremony. He imagined Emma walking down the aisle, the music, the lake behind them, the future he thought they were building. But sometimes life changes in a single moment. With a single sound, his phone buzzed. Just one message, and it changed the entire direction of his life. Mark didn't expect anything strange. He thought it was Emma confirming the cake tasting, or maybe a reminder about the rehearsal dinner. But when he opened the message, something cold ran through his chest. It wasn't a warm message. It wasn't loving. It wasn't anything he had ever expected. Emma's text was short. Too short. Almost like she wanted to say as little as possible. And in that silence, Mark felt something break. The narrator leans closer, as if sharing a secret. This wasn't just a message. It was the first crack in the truth Mark had never seen coming. He stared at the words over and over, trying to understand. Trying to make sense of a tone that didn't sound like the woman he planned to marry. Something felt off. Cold, distant, almost rehearsed. Mark's mind raced. Why would she send something like this? Why now? Why 1 week before they were supposed to stand in front of everyone they loved? Questions pulled at him like heavy weights. Was she scared? Was she hiding something? Or was this the sign of something far more painful? He tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. He tried texting again, but she didn't respond. He stared at his phone, feeling his heartbeat in his throat. And in that moment, he felt the first whisper of a truth he wished he could ignore. There was something Emma didn't want him to know, something she thought she could keep buried, but secrets have a strange way of floating to the surface, especially when someone is trying to bury them right before the wedding. Mark didn't know it yet. But this message wasn't the end. It was the beginning of heartbreak, the beginning of discovery, the beginning of a transformation he never saw coming. Because the man who read that message, the quiet, hopeful groom, wouldn't be the same man by the time the wedding day arrived. And Emma, she had no idea what she had just set in motion. As the narrator's voice drops into a slow, dramatic rhythm, she thought she could walk away without consequence. But she never imagined what Mark would do next, or who he'd become once the truth finally surfaced. People used to say Mark was the kind of man you could trust with anything. In his mid-30s, steady in his work, calm in his voice, always thoughtful. He planned everything: meals, trips, birthdays. He was organized in a way that brought comfort to everyone around him. The kind of man who remembered anniversaries, checked in on friends, and made sure the people he cared about felt safe. So when he met Emma, it felt like the start of something magical. Emma was in her early 30s, charming, bright, and full of unpredictable energy. She walked into rooms like she carried her own sunlight. Her laugh was quick, her stories dramatic, and people were naturally drawn to her. Mark was no exception. He liked her spark. She liked his stability. Together, they looked like a perfect match, the steady man and the spontaneous woman. Their friends would smile and say, "You two balance each other out." And for a while, it seemed true. They met at a small coffee shop in Seattle. Mark spilled his drink, Emma joked about it, and somehow they ended up talking for hours. It wasn't planned. It wasn't careful. It was something that just happened, and Mark loved that. Emma made life feel less predictable, and he didn't realize he was giving her the role of surprise, while he carried the role of certainty. Their early romance was filled with long drives, late-night talks, and moments that made Mark believe he had finally found his person. Emma had this way of making him feel chosen, special, even lucky. And maybe that's why he ignored the first few red flags. The small lies. The shifting stories. The times she canceled plans at the last minute. The way she brushed things off with a laugh that didn't always match the story she told. Mark didn't want to overthink it. He wanted it to work. When they got engaged, everyone celebrated. People said it was about time. They said Emma had finally slowed down and Mark had finally opened up. It seemed like a perfect step forward. The wedding planning started smoothly. At least for Mark. Emma had ideas, big ones, but she didn't love the details. Mark stepped in because that's who he was. He booked the photographer, secured the catering, arranged the music. And he didn't mind. He told himself he was helping. He told himself Emma was just busy. The venue was his favorite part, a beautiful lakeside estate with wide green lawns, soft lighting, and a view that looked like a painting. He had dreamed of a quiet, elegant wedding, and when Emma agreed, he felt a burst of joy. He paid for the venue entirely on his own, proud to give them a perfect place to start their life together. Everything looked set. Everything looked stable, but sometimes the strongest-looking walls hide the deepest cracks, and as the wedding day grew closer, the unraveling began, quiet at first, almost invisible. Until it was too late to pretend the cracks weren't there, something shifted in Emma long before Mark realized it. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in small moments, tiny pieces of distance that slowly formed a wall he didn't know how to climb. At first, Emma became distracted. Her smile was still there, but it didn't reach her eyes the way it used to. She'd sit beside Mark on the couch, staring at her phone instead of talking. She'd laugh at messages she wouldn't show him. And every time he asked, she'd simply say, "It's nothing. Don't worry." But the human heart knows when something is wrong. Emma started staying out later than usual, claiming she had extra work or last-minute errands. Sometimes she said she was with friends he never met. Sometimes she said she needed space to think. Her explanations came too quickly, or too slowly, almost like she was choosing her words carefully. Mark felt worry creeping in, but he didn't want to sound controlling. He didn't want to push her away. So he did what kind people often do. He gave her the benefit of the doubt. Still, the signs grew harder to ignore. There were late-night messages she flipped her phone face down to hide. Sudden mood swings. Days where she looked nervous for no obvious reason. Emma had always been unpredictable, but this was different. This was secretive. One night, Mark gently asked, "Is everything okay? You seem distant." Emma didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm fine, Mark. You're reading too much into things." Her tone wasn't soft. It wasn't warm. It was final, like a door closing. But even closed doors can't block out the sound of truth. The tension grew, stretching the air between them. Their conversations became shorter, their dinners quieter. Emma seemed lost in a world she wouldn't let Mark see. And every time he tried to reach her, she brushed him off with a practiced smile. A smile that no longer matched the woman he fell in love with. Then came the moment that changed everything. It happened on a Friday afternoon, a week before the wedding. Mark was finalizing some payments when he noticed a strange charge on their joint expense list. A bill from a fancy rooftop restaurant he didn't recognize. A place he had never been with Emma. A place known for its romantic sunset dinners. At first, he tried to justify it. Maybe she booked something for them. Maybe it was a surprise. Maybe, but the doubt didn't leave. It settled deep inside him, heavy and cold. That same evening, Mark received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, no one spoke. But in the background, he could hear laughter. A woman's voice. And it sounded painfully familiar, Emma's. The call ended abruptly, leaving Mark frozen, staring into the silence of his living room. His heart wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. His mind started to piece things together. He sensed the truth quietly rising beneath the surface. A truth he wasn't ready to face. But hope is powerful, and sometimes Hope keeps us blind far longer than we should be. Mark prayed he was wrong. He needed to be wrong, but deep down, he already knew he WSN single quotes to. 1 week before the wedding. Just 7 days before Mark was supposed to stand in front of everyone he loved. The truth finally broke through. It didn't come with shouting. It didn't come with a tearful confession. It came with a single cold text message. Mark had just finished confirming the seating chart when his phone buzzed. He smiled at first, expecting Emma to ask about flowers or music or rehearsal plans. Instead, he froze. Her message was short, sharp, almost emotionless. "I can't do this anymore. I'm ending things. Please don't contact me." For a long moment, Mark simply stared at the screen, unable to breathe, unable to process what he was reading. His heart felt like it stopped, then dropped. He waited for another message, a call, an explanation, something, but nothing came. He tried calling her, but she declined. He called again, declined. He texted, "What's going on? Can we talk?" No answer. The silence that followed felt louder than any argument could have. Emma didn't come home that night. She didn't come the next morning. She didn't even come to pack her things. Instead, she disappeared behind a wall of excuses and vanished from the life they were supposed to share. Mark reached out to her family, thinking they might know something. But even they were shocked. Her mother cried. Her father was speechless. Friends called Mark nonstop, confused, worried, asking what happened. Mark didn't have an answer. He didn't even have a clue. The humiliation hit him slowly, like waves he couldn't stop. People asking if the wedding was still on. Vendors calling for confirmations. Guests checking flights. The venue contacting him about final details. And all he could say was, "There's been a change." But the truth, the real truth, didn't stay hidden for long. 2 days later, a mutual friend reached out with a heavy voice and a heavier truth. Emma hadn't left to figure things out. She had left to be with someone else, someone she had been secretly seeing for months, someone she had gone to that rooftop restaurant with, someone she had laughed with during those late-night calls. Suddenly, everything made sense. The distance, the excuses, the lies she brushed off with a smile. Mark felt something inside him break. But not loudly, not dramatically. He didn't throw anything. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just sat there, hurt, quiet, and unbelievably still. Because when someone you love betrays you so deeply, the pain doesn't explode. It sinks. Family and friends rushed to comfort him. But Mark didn't want comfort. He wanted clarity. He wanted to understand how a woman who once claimed to love him could walk away with such a cold goodbye. And as the narrator's voice lowers, carrying that slow burn of justice, Emma thought she walked away clean. But she had no idea what Mark would do next, or how her betrayal would return to her in a way she never expected. Humanize 498 words. The day after the breakup text, Mark found himself standing inside the venue he once dreamed of. A quiet lakeside estate, now filled with nothing but empty chairs, untouched decorations, and a silence that felt heavier than any anger he could have felt. He walked slowly through the room, his footsteps echoing off the wooden floors. Every part of the setup whispered what should have been: laughter, music, vows, the start of a new life. But now, all of it felt like a reminder of a future that had been destroyed with one cold message. Mark sat down in the very seat where he imagined Emma would walk toward him. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just let the silence settle around him. And that silence spoke louder than heartbreak, because silence doesn't lie. Silence forces you to face the truth you've been avoiding. And in that stillness, something inside him shifted. The man who had spent weeks hoping for explanations began to feel something else rising, not rage but clarity, not chaos but focus. A calm, steady understanding that the woman he loved had walked away long before he ever noticed. After a long breath, Mark reached into his folder to check the final contract details. It was supposed to be routine, until he saw the words that changed everything. Primary contract holder, Mark Lawson. Payment, paid in full by contract holder. Authority over event, sole holder. He blinked, reading it again. The venue wasn't under both of their names. It wasn't shared. It wasn't something Emma could cancel or take from him. It was his. Every detail. Every hour booked. Every room reserved. All his. Almost as if the universe had given him a card he didn't know he was holding. As he stood up, a voice broke the quiet. The venue manager. A kind older woman with a soft tone. She looked at him with gentle understanding and said, "Mark, this place. It's fully yours. What you do with that day is completely up to you." Her words echoed in the empty space, settling over him like a spark striking dry ground. What he did with the day. The day that was supposed to define the start of his new life. A new thought formed in his mind, slow, steady, and surprisingly calm. He didn't have to cancel. He didn't have to run. He didn't have to hide from the humiliation Emma tried to leave him with. He could reshape the day. Redesign it. Reclaim it. A new kind of event. A new kind of closure. Not loud, not messy, but intentional, calculated, precise, powerful. For the first time in days, Mark felt his chest lighten. The heartbreak didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled him. Something stronger did. Purpose. As the narrator lowers the tone, letting suspense build. And that was the moment Mark realized something Emma never expected. She took his future away. But the wedding day? That belonged to him, and he knew exactly what he was going to do with it. Mark didn't announce anything. He didn't post online. He didn't call every guest to explain what happened. He simply went quiet. And in that quiet, he began to plan. Not a wedding. Not a celebration of love. But something new. Something honest. Something that would help him step out of the pain Emma tried to leave him with. He sat at his desk with the original wedding schedule in front of him. The florist. The catering team. The music arrangements. The seating charts. He stared at them for a long time. Then slowly began crossing things out. One by one. The first dance, gone. The unity ceremony, gone. The vows, obviously gone. But in place of each canceled moment, he added something else. A thank you dinner for the people who stood by him. A reflection speech to share the truth he had carried alone. A surprise finale, something he didn't write down. Something he held only in his mind. This wasn't about embarrassing Emma. It wasn't about shouting or revenge that destroys. It was about reclaiming his day. Reclaiming his story. Reclaiming his dignity. Mark made a private list of guests, not everyone, only the people who mattered. The friends who checked on him. The family who stayed by his side. The people who would understand the truth without him needing to spell it out. He sent each person a short message. The event is still on. Same place. Same day. Please come. No explanation. No details. Just an invitation to something different. Vendors were surprised when Mark refused to cancel. The florist asked gently, "Are you sure you want to continue with the arrangements?" Mark nodded with a calm they didn't expect. The catering manager said, "We can adjust the menu if it's no longer a wedding." Mark simply replied, "Please do." Everything shifted. Everything transformed. The white roses stayed, but now they symbolized something else. The soft music remained, but the playlist changed. The layout stayed, but the atmosphere would be different. Mark stood in the center of the venue days before the event, looking around at the space that was supposed to hold his wedding. It didn't hurt the way it used to. He could finally breathe there again, because this day wouldn't be about loss anymore. It would be about truth. He rehearsed his speech in the mirror, simple, honest lines that told the story without cruelty. He didn't need drama. He didn't need anger. He just needed clarity. The finale, however, he kept that part hidden. A symbolic moment that would reveal everything Emma tried to hide, without him ever raising his voice. And as preparations continued, the narrator leans in with quiet suspense. Emma thought she had walked away from the wedding untouched, but she had no idea she would soon walk into her own unmasking, on the very day she believed she had ruined. Word travels fast in small circles, especially when curiosity is hungry. By the end of the week, whispers reached Emma. The event is still happening. At first, she didn't believe it. Why would Mark continue with anything after what she did? Why wouldn't he cancel the venue, hide away, disappear in embarrassment? Her ego answered for her. He's probably desperate, or confused, or hoping you'll come back. So she arrived, not because she cared, not because she felt guilty, but because she wanted to see the chaos she expected him to be drowning in. She pictured a ruined room, angry guests, crying families, a broken man standing alone. But when she stepped into the venue, her face froze. There was no chaos, no shouting, no heartbreak splashed across the walls. Instead, she walked into something far more powerful, soft, calm music floating through the air. Guests dressed elegantly, talking in warm voices. Tables beautifully decorated with simple flowers. Lights dimmed just enough to give the room a gentle glow. It didn't feel like a failed wedding. It felt like a beautiful evening, redesigned with purpose. Emma's eyes darted around, confused. She expected disaster. She found grace. She slowly realized something she didn't want to believe. Mark hadn't canceled anything. He had transformed the entire day, and none of it included her. She stood near the back as people took their seats, whispering softly. Some turned to look at her, not with anger, but with a knowing quiet that made her stomach twist. Then Mark stepped onto the small stage. He looked calm, steady, almost peaceful. It was the kind of peace that comes after a storm, not before one. He began speaking, his voice gentle but firm. He talked about love, real love, about trust, how fragile it can be, about promises and what it feels like when they break quietly in someone's hands. He never said Emma's name, not once. But every word painted a picture so clear that the guests began to shift in their seats. Nods, sighs, soft gasps. People understood. Emma felt heat rising under her skin. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, then fidgeted with her purse. The room felt tighter with every sentence Mark spoke. He described a man who gave everything, and a partner who walked away without a word. A man who carried the weight of silence, until the truth finally revealed itself. A man who chose dignity over anger. Emma's eyes widened as she realized she wasn't just watching a speech. She was watching her own story being gently exposed, not with accusations, not with shouting, but with calm truth, the kind that leaves a person completely speechless. And the narrator delivers the line with quiet force. He did not need to accuse her. The silence accused her for him. When Mark reached the final part of his speech, the entire room went silent. Not out of shock, but out of respect. He took a slow breath, looked around at the faces of the people who stood by him, and then said the words that shifted the entire atmosphere. I want to share 3 things I gained from this ending. The guests leaned in. Emma stiffened in the back row. 1. The wedding funds he reclaimed. Mark lifted a small folder, the original payment receipts. In the middle of the heartbreak, he said softly, I realized something. Every bill, every reservation, every detail was under my name. I paid for everything. So instead of letting this day be a loss, I chose to take back what was mine. A few people nodded. Someone even clapped quietly. Mark smiled gently. I turned the wedding funds into savings for new plans. New dreams. My future isn't broken. It just looks different now. Emma's face tightened. She hadn't expected that. She thought he'd be buried in debt while she walked away untouched. Not anymore. 2. The new opportunities he embraced. Mark continued. I realized I had spent so much time planning a life for two that I forgot I still had my own. He told the room about the new job offer he accepted, the trip he booked for himself, the projects he finally had time to chase. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply telling the truth, that losing someone who didn't value him opened space for people and opportunities that would. Guests murmured in approval. Mark stood taller. Emma looked smaller. 3. A symbolic gesture of his freedom. Then came the moment nobody saw coming. Mark held up the small velvet ring box, the engagement ring he once chose with hope in his chest. But instead of sadness, there was peace in his eyes. I won't return this, he said calmly. And I won't keep it out of bitterness. I'm donating it today, all of it, to a charity that helps rebuild people's lives. Because mine is being rebuilt in ways I never expected. The room erupted in soft applause. Some guests stood. Some wiped tears. Emma's lips parted, as if she wanted to speak, to defend herself, to explain the unexplainable. But before she could step forward, Mark gently raised a hand, not in anger, but in closure. No, he said quietly. Not today. No shouting. No scene. Just dignity. The crowd turned their support toward Mark. Warm smiles. Hands on his shoulders. A circle of comfort she was no longer part of. Emma stood alone, realizing something far heavier than public embarrassment. She didn't just lose the wedding. She lost the version of Mark who once believed she was his future. She lost the man who needed her. And the narrator closes the moment with a deep, emotional punch. In that room filled with calm strength, she finally saw it. Mark wasn't heartbroken anymore. He was done. When the evening came to a close, Mark didn't rush out of the venue. He took one last slow look around the room, the flowers, the soft lights, the guests smiling at him with pride. For the first time in weeks, his chest felt light. He walked toward the exit with steady steps, not hurried or shaken. No tremble in his hands. No weight dragging behind him. Just calm confidence. The same venue that once felt like a painful reminder now felt like a doorway. A beginning. A place where he didn't lose something. He reclaimed something. As he pushed open the front doors, the cool night air met him like a soft welcome. It didn't sting. It didn't burn. It felt refreshing. He wasn't the man who walked into that venue earlier. He was someone stronger. A new routine, a new life. In the weeks that followed, Mark rebuilt his days. Not out of desperation, but out of intention. He woke up earlier. He started jogging again, something he stopped doing during the stress of wedding planning. He cooked his own meals, discovered new hobbies, reached out to old friends he had unintentionally drifted from. He said yes to opportunities he once put on hold, not because Emma stopped him, but because he always made himself smaller to keep the peace. Now, he didn't shrink for anyone. His new job began, a role he once didn't think he could handle. But stepping into that office made him feel alive again. Like he had stepped into a version of himself that Emma never bothered to see. Mark wasn't healing out of spite. He was healing because life finally had space to grow. Emma's world quietly changes. Months later, whispers reached him. Not because he asked, not because he cared, simply because things have a strange way of circling back. Her new relationship, the one she threw everything away for, wasn't steady yet. All arguments, breakdowns, on and off moments that left her more tired than fulfilled. People noticed the shift in her. The bright, charming woman she once presented to the world looked dimmer, as if she carried something heavy she couldn't explain. Her reputation gently faded too. Not because Mark said anything. He never once told the full story. But people notice patterns. People see how someone leaves, and how someone arrives in another person's life. And Emma? She faced her choices without anyone needing to push her. Success without revenge. Most powerful part of Mark's journey wasn't the speech. It wasn't the transformed venue. It wasn't even the symbolic gesture of letting go. It was the fact that he chose to rise instead of crumble. He didn't need to chase revenge. He didn't need to expose Emma with loud accusations. His success, his calm, quiet rise, spoke louder than any anger could. And as the narrator softens their tone, offering the final emotional reflection, in the end, Mark didn't win because Emma failed. He won because he chose himself, and walked away stronger than she ever expected. The narrator's voice softens, shifting from storytelling to reflection, gentle, steady, and filled with quiet wisdom. There are moments in life when betrayal hits like a storm. It shakes the ground beneath your feet. It leaves you questioning your worth, your judgment, your heart. But storms don't last forever. And when they pass, something powerful always remains. Clarity. Mark learned this the hard way. He learned that betrayal hurts, not because someone walked away, but because of the trust you gave them. He learned that heartbreak can break a person down, or open them up to something better. He learned that the truth cannot stay hidden forever, no matter how carefully someone tries to cover it. And most importantly, he learned that justice doesn't always come from anger, that sometimes it comes from rising above, from choosing dignity over drama, from rebuilding yourself when someone else tried to break your confidence. Mark didn't get his justice by shouting at Emma or exposing her publicly. He didn't try to ruin her life or chase revenge that would have damaged his own peace. Instead, he chose himself, he rebuilt, he grew. He succeeded. And in the quietest, most powerful way possible. That became the answer, because when you rise, the people who hurt you are forced to face themselves, without you needing to say a single word. Sometimes, the greatest victory is simply living a life that proves you deserved better. The narrator pauses, letting that truth settle. The people who walk away teach us who truly belongs in our story. Emma walked away from Mark, but in doing so, she revealed something she never intended to. She revealed who she really was. And life has a way of showing people the weight of their choices, even when no one else says a thing. Mark's journey wasn't about revenge. It was about rediscovery, about learning that endings can become beginnings, and that some losses are actually quiet blessings. He stepped into a future that wasn't broken at all. It was simply different, stronger, clearer, freer. The narrator leans into the final cinematic moment. The last line delivered with slow, emotional precision. In the end, she left him before the wedding, and he left her in the past. A full circle. A quiet victory. A reminder that the truth always reveals itself, and when it does, it sets the right people free. If Mark's journey touched you, if his quiet strength or his comeback meant something to you, take a moment to support the channel. Hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Every story here is a reminder that healing is possible. Truth always rises, and you deserve better than the people who walked away. Thank you for watching, and remember, your next chapter can be stronger than your last.